Now that we have some nested families, what can we do with them? Well, just about anything we can do with other geometry. In the previous movie, we nested a chair and a table into our family that we see here on screen. The next logical thing to do would be to copy and array those chairs around the table. In this movie, we'll make an array of chairs along the length of the table, and then we'll make the array parametric so that it can adjust with the length of the table as we flex it. If you like, you can continue with the file if you're following along that you used in the last movie. Otherwise, I've provided a file here that you can open up, and let's go ahead and get started here. So we have this chair here at the end, and I'm going to actually maximize up my plan view here just so we can see things a little bit better. We can always go back to the multi-view later. And I'm going to take my table and go to the longest size that I have, the 120-inch long size, to give myself a little bit more room to work here. We're going to take this chair and array it along the length of this table here. So I'm going to select the chair, and over here in the Modify tab, I'm going to go to the Array command. Now, if you've used the Array command before in the project environment, it's exactly the same here in the Family Editor. It has this Group and Associate feature. So we can either do a linear or a radial array. We're going to do linear in this case. And it has this Group and Associate feature, and that will actually place the arrayed elements in a group and then array the group and keep them connected and associated to one another. And this is what is going to allow us to make it parametric. So we definitely want to have that feature turned on. And in my experience, when you're trying to set up a parametric array, it's best to start with a quantity of 2 here. Don't change the quantity yet. We'll figure out how many chairs we want later. So we're going to start with 2, and I like to move to the last item. And the reason is I want you to think of this as sort of laying out bookends. So imagine this is a bookshelf, and we're going to put the 2 bookends, and that's going to establish how much space we have to work with, and then the array will fill in between, okay? So we're going to choose the last item here, and I'm going to pick my start point of the array really anywhere on the existing chair, and the end point, a little counterintuitively, I'm going to stop just randomly right here. Now the reason I say counterintuitively is because you probably were expecting that we should array all the way over to 1'6" off the other end. We are going to do that, but again, I want to establish that relationship very clearly. So I'm going to do that as a second step after I create the array. So at this point, I have the array, and we can test it easily enough by changing the quantity. You can see that it's 3 chairs, and then we'll go back to 2 chairs. So that's working correctly, but it's not parametric. If I were to select this table, adjust the length, you'll see this chair stays put. This one is moving, but this one stays put right there where it was, and it doesn't respond to the size or location of the table at all. So let's go back to our 120 size, and we want to address that now. We want to kind of lock this thing down. Now the easiest way to do that is the same way that we did it over here. So we come over here, and we're going to take a dimension. We're going to dimension off the end of the table to the center of the chair, and I'll line it up with the other guy just to keep things nice and neat. I'm going to select this item here at the end, click on Activate Dimensions. When I do that, that'll activate that dimension I just created. I can make that value 1'6". That'll move that bookend over there to the other side where it needs to be, and then I'll lock that. Now I also have to lock it in the other direction as well. So we'll go from here to the center, and we're kind of getting a little messy here, so let me move it over here. I actually prefer to have this a little neater, so let me pull that one over there and pull this one over here. It's just a little fussy thing I like to do. Okay, let's test it out. So let's select this guy. There, seems to be working. Let's try another size. Seems to be working. So we've locked down our bookends now. We've got those associated the way we want. But of course, we only have 2 chairs. And so if we had a table this long, you'd probably expect to get probably another 2-3 chairs in there. So what we need to do now is create a way to parametrically control this value right here. Because our end user is not going to have any way to be able to click in there like we're doing and change that number. You can only do this in the Family Editor. Well, you see this line that appears here? It's sometimes a little tricky to find it. Sometimes it'll flicker in and out. If you just move your mouse in the general vicinity of the number, you'll find it. And that's actually a dimension. And it calls it the array, but it's actually a dimension. And if you look up here on the options bar, it's got the label feature, same as we saw for other dimensions in the Family Editor. So we just open this up, we add a parameter, We're going to call this chair quantity. You'll notice here that the type of parameter is an integer parameter. So in order for it to be used as an array parameter, it has to be a whole number. So Revit understands that, and it automatically sets the type of parameter as an integer parameter. It's grouping it under other, but to me, the quantity of chairs seems sort of like a graphical thing. You know, we're establishing the graphics, how many chairs we have. It might also be thought of as a constraint. So it's really up to you. You could put it under constraints. You could even make an argument for putting it under construction, I suppose. Although I think they intended construction for like actual contractor building construction kind of things. But you could argue this is the construction of the table. The point is that the grouping here is really your preference. I like it under graphics, but if you want to put it under another category, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to click OK here, and now you'll see the label appears in front of the number. So the quantity of chairs is now set to 2. So let's go to Family Types, kind of move this out of the way a little so we can see. And there's our quantity now. It's got a little spinner on it that we can actually use to adjust the quantity. Now be careful, an array will fail if you go fewer than 2. We're going to leave it at 2 or more. Let's try 4 here. Click Apply. Seems to be working. Let's increase it to 5. Apply again. We can even fit 5. I think at 6 or 7, we'd start to have a little bit of a problem there. So we want to choose a logical number. I'm going to try 5. And there we have it. Let's click OK on that. That takes care of that. And so now we have our parametric array. Now, if I select this table and I flex it, well, then 5 doesn't work so great anymore, right? So we still have more work to do. So in the next movie, we're going to talk about actually creating a little bit more smarts around this to kind of control the quantity of chairs as a consequence of the overall size of the table. But reiterating what we've done here, a parametric array is simply an array just like you would create in the project environment, with the main difference being that you select one of the arrayed items and you can select the dimension string that's created and actually associate it with a family parameter to control the quantity of arrayed items.